Yummy. This is the first time I've ever had such delicious sushi. For a moment, I forgot I was in a restaurant and, as a young elementary school student, I blurted out loudly. That day, I was at a sushi restaurant for the first time in my life. I was there as a reward for my good mock exam results, brought by my father. "Eat whatever you like," he said. He must have been in a really good mood. My father said this with a smile. While I was enjoying the sushi, I was fascinated by the chef at the counter, who was making sushi as if performing magic. Whether he knew I was watching or not, the chef continued to make sushi with a smile. Sometimes he'd say, "Watch closely, young man," and deliberately make sushi right in front of me. That day, not only my stomach but also my heart was filled, and I went home content. From now on, if you do well on your tests, I'll take you out to eat whatever you want, my father said on the way home. I wondered if he was serious, as he had had quite a bit to drink. Noticing my thoughts, he became a bit more serious and said, "Don't worry, I'll keep my promise." From then on, eating out became a customary reward for my good mock exam results. "You can choose anywhere you like," my father would say, but I always picked that sushi restaurant. I wanted to eat sushi, of course, but watching the chef make sushi was my greatest joy. "Understood," my father said on the day of the final exam results before my private middle school entrance exam. "Sorry, I wasn't listening." When I said that, my father said, "Listen up, this is important," and started speaking again. "I wanted to go to college, but my parents said they couldn't afford it, so I couldn't go. I want you to go to college, preferably somewhere your cousins can't easily get into. Get into a good college. Then your future will be secure. Remember, it's a promise between men." I thought, I can't just agree to a promise like that, but I said, "Understood." I worked hard to meet my father's expectations. Thanks to my efforts, I was able to attend a well-known private middle school in my area and got accepted into one of the top high schools in the state. Though it's odd to say it myself, I was top of my class in high school and managed to get into a university my cousins couldn't easily attend, just as my father wanted. Having been focused solely on my studies up to high school, I was the same age as the number of years I'd been without a girlfriend. However, in my third year of university, I got a girlfriend. She was 2 years younger than me, named Ashley. I met Ashley at a drinking party held jointly by several universities. I was talkative because I'd been drinking, and Ashley, being underage and only drinking juice, was a good listener. After going home, I regretted talking too much. I wanted to see her again, but I thought I might have been too forward and didn't contact her. A few days later, an unexpected development occurred. "Have you contacted Ashley?" a friend from my club asked me. I didn't understand why he'd say that. "Ashley said she had the most fun talking to you. You should definitely contact her." Hearing that, I wanted to jump for joy. So, I decided to send Ashley a text. But I had no idea what to write. After much deliberation, I sent a simple "It's been a while. How are you?" I regretted not being able to come up with a single clever line, cursing my low romance quotient. Ashley replied surprisingly quickly. "It's been a while. I'm glad. I thought you wouldn't contact me again." I spontaneously did a fist pump. From then on, I was embarrassingly forward. As soon as I got a reply from Ashley, I responded immediately. I thought if I missed this chance, there wouldn't be another, so, desperate, I believed that responding quickly was the best way to make a good impression. Looking back, it was almost comical how eager I was. But somehow, my efforts paid off, and Ashley agreed to date me. Right after Ashley and I started dating, the job hunting season began in earnest. I didn't have any specific career or company in mind. I just vaguely hoped to find a job close to the university. I felt this way because I didn't want to reduce the time I could spend with Ashley after getting a job. But Ashley was different. She had researched companies more thoroughly than me. "This one seems good," she'd say, showing me a job guide with sticky notes. I ended up taking the entrance exams for the companies Ashley suggested. In job interviews, I felt a good response everywhere. It was then I first realized the high brand value of my university in the corporate world. It turns out, big companies choose based on university, not personality. I thought. So, even though I got offers from several companies, I ultimately let Ashley make the final decision. Ashley's eyes sparkled as she looked through the company brochure where I got the job. Maybe she's thinking about our life together after marriage, I thought to myself, watching Ashley. The company Ashley chose had overseas branches and was headquartered in New York. It was about a 2-hour drive from where the university was located. I was worried about having less time to see Ashley. "Don't worry, after graduation, I'll move to New York too. It's only 2 years that we'll have less time to see each other," Ashley said nonchalantly. I thought she's strong. But I was mistaken. I really didn't understand anything. 2 years after I graduated, just as Ashley had said, she moved to New York. We started living together, becoming even closer than during our university days. Ashley was truly kind and accepting. So, we never fought. And a year later, we get married. Married life was happy. Work was busy every day, and I often came home late. But no matter how tired I was, my lovely wife was there to welcome me. Coming home was what I looked forward to most. But about a year later, our married life changed dramatically. A global economic shock hit, and the company I worked for took a major blow, even going bankrupt. Faced with this unforeseen event, I was at a loss. But more distraught than me was Ashley. She blamed herself because the company she recommended went bankrupt. Seeing her like that, I thought, I need to be strong for her. I took Ashley's hand, trying to cheer her up, and said, "It's going to be tough, but let's get through this together." I expected her usual smile, saying, "Yes, let's do our best." But her reaction was something I never imagined. Ashley pulled her hand away. "What's the point of being married to you if it's like this?" Ashley said, clearly angry. Disgusted with me might be the right way to describe it. "What's the point of being with someone like you, who has no special qualities, got you a job at a well-paying company, only for you to become unemployed as soon as we get married? This ruins all my plans for the future," she said. I felt a chill down my spine. Was this really what my wife was saying? Ashley went straight into the bedroom and locked the door. From then on, she lived in a way to avoid seeing me much. I thought a lot. Was that really her true feelings? Was she just confused and said it? But, is this what love is? How did I come to love Ashley? Why did we get married? What should I do now? Divorce. A cold, dismissive voice said. "Huh?" Lost in my thoughts, I turned around to see Ashley behind me with papers in hand. It was a divorce document. "You're the reason for the divorce, so you should be the one to leave," she said. Huh? Confused, I was left alone as Ashley went back to the bedroom. I had no desire to persuade Ashley. The next day, I applied divorce and left the apartment with my belongings. I remembered what my father used to say. Get into a good university, and your future will be secure. But what about reality? Even graduating from a good university, you're unemployed if your company goes bankrupt. Unemployed, and then divorced. Even if you're smart and do well in school, you know nothing about the real world. I'm really hopeless, aren't I? Having lost my job and separated from my wife, I wasn't at rock bottom. Surprisingly, I found myself bursting into laughter. I felt a sense of clarity. This was the first time I ever felt this way. Then, I went wherever I wanted, staying wherever I liked. I discovered that even budget hotels could be quite relaxing and comfortable. During this time, I overheard someone speaking somewhere in the city. I don't want to go to work. If only I could live just doing what I love. Doing what I love. Yes, that's it, I thought. I headed to a specific place. It was a high-end sushi restaurant I used to frequent, located near the company I had worked for. Often used for business entertaining, it was well known for its quality. "Welcome," the owner of the sushi restaurant said, recognizing me as I entered. She must have known about the company's bankruptcy. "You've had a hard time, haven't you?" she said with a complex expression. The head chef, Robert, also came out to talk to me. "Hey, is this a farewell visit?" Cutting off Robert's words, I said, "Please, let me work here." Robert looked surprised at first, but then quickly furrowed his brows, a look of bewilderment crossing his face. It was a look of perplexity. "I'm serious. I'll do anything. Please hire me here," I pleaded. At first, Robert tried to refuse my offer, coming up with various reasons. At that time, I was already over 25 years old. Even if you start after high school graduation, it's considered late to become a fully fledged sushi chef. It's going to require tremendous effort, and there's no guarantee of success. If I think there's no hope, I'll have to let you go. Are you still willing to do it? Even after Robert said this, I had no doubts. It seemed like Robert gave in because of my persistence. "Be here early tomorrow morning," he said. Since then, I worked harder than ever, much more than when I was in a corporate job. I arrived first thing in the morning to clean. I willingly took on tasks that other staff disliked. Robert was a man of few words, a true sushi chef. He was strict and allowed no compromises. I was scolded many times, even for minor things. I aimed to work in the kitchen as soon as possible, but it was harder than I expected. As Robert had said, the path to becoming a sushi chef was not easy. Honestly, there were times I wanted to run away. During those times, I remembered the magician-like sushi chef I saw in the sushi restaurant my father took me to when I was in elementary school. About 2 years after I started working with Robert, he said, "Help with the preparation." I felt like I finally took my first step as a sushi chef and was delighted. Robert believed in learning by observation, saying, "Steal the skills from me." I worked alongside Robert, making sure not to miss a single movement. Had I ever been this earnest about work? I felt fulfilled every day. By the way, do you have someone special? One day, while working in the kitchen, Robert asked me. At first, I didn't understand what he meant. Seeing me confused, Robert said a bit angrily, "I mean, do you have a girlfriend, you slowpoke?" No, I don't." "What do you think about her?" Robert gestured with his head. Robert had a 25-year-old daughter. Anyone could see Robert doted on her, his only child. She was as kind-hearted as her mother, the owner. She was straightforward, saying what was bad, and what was good, regardless of who she was talking to. Her strength of character was just like her father, Robert. For me, it was an unreachable dream. Or so I thought, as I had secretly harbored feelings for the daughter over the years I spent in the restaurant. I was worried that if Robert found out, he would kick me out. So, I was caught off guard. "But I'm divorced. Even if I'm okay with it, what about your daughter?" "You fool. My wife has already checked her feelings, and it doesn't matter if you're once or twice divorced. What's important are the feelings. Nothing else." Robert said this with a hearty laugh. A few months later, I got married for the second time. My wife and I had our share of fights, but our bond grew stronger afterward. It felt different from my first marriage. I could sense what a true marital relationship should be. We were blessed with 2 children. When I was in my mid-30s, Robert allowed me to start my own sushi restaurant. "Make sure you uphold our flavors," he said, sending me off. A few days after I opened my restaurant, an unexpected person came in as a customer. It was my ex-wife from 10 years ago. Beside my ex-wife, there seemed to be her new husband and a child of elementary school age. I immediately recognized her, but she seemed indifferent, chatting with her family. When the child said, "This is delicious," my ex-wife spoke to the child. "Remember this, get into a good university and land a good job. Then you can eat sushi like this anytime you want," she said while eating the sushi I had prepared. Since my ex-wife's family came in late, they stayed almost until closing. As I finished seeing off all the other customers, a voice called out from behind me. "Can I have a word?" I heard a voice from behind me. It was a nasty, cold voice. When I turned around, my ex-wife was standing there. When I looked around, Ashley said, "It's okay, I sent them home first." She had waited after sending her family home first. "What do you want?" I asked, and she abruptly said, "You've really fallen low, haven't you? From a top university graduate to a good company, and now this, a sushi chef. What are you thinking? It's unbelievable." I doubted her humanity, suddenly speaking like this. I never thought the woman I once loved and shared a brief life with could be so petty at heart. I was so taken aback by this unexpected situation that I was lost for words. "After all, it was your fault that my remarriage was so difficult," she began, as if spewing out her feelings of the past 10 years. "Just stop it." After a while, someone spoke from behind me. It was Robert, who had become my father-in-law. He had come to check how well I was managing the restaurant. Robert walked past me and stood in front of my ex-wife. "You were the one who drove him away when he was at his lowest. So, how you've lived your life since then is none of his concern. He's carved out his own path, worked tirelessly, and now owns this restaurant. You might look down on a sushi chef, but I work with pride. And so does he. You chose a man based on his educational background and relied on a man for your life. That's a world you wouldn't understand. We have the right to choose our customers here. Please don't come back to this restaurant again," Robert said to my ex-wife in a stern tone. It was rare for the usually quiet Robert to speak so much at once. Clearly, he was deeply upset. My ex-wife looked stunned. "You need to be strong too," he said, smacking me hard on the back. Thanks to this, my restaurant became well known in the neighborhood. I gained a regular clientele. But since that day, my ex-wife has never visited again. I can run my business without any reservations, doing what I love. I consider that day's event the best opening gift I could have received from my father-in-law. I'm a 22-year-old chef specializing in pasta. Though I refer to myself as a chef, this field is deeply complex. I am still learning, working as an apprentice in the kitchen where I'm employed. However, my ultimate goal is to master the art of pasta making and create delicious dishes. This aspiration began when I was looking for work after leaving junior high, and the owner of the local pasta restaurant, who I'll refer to as John, offered me a chance. Having been raised by a single father, I frequently had dinner at this restaurant whenever my dad was late getting home. Thus, the flavor of the pasta from this establishment holds a special place in my heart, a sentiment I cherish and wish to preserve. As John lacks a successor, I dedicate myself to training each day to maintain that unique taste. One day, after parking my bicycle outside the shop following a delivery. "Hey, is that you, Jason?" Hearing this, I quickly turned around. there stood a person with a somewhat familiar, yet unrecognizable, face. Given that he knew my name, he must be an acquaintance, but I couldn't place him. Then he said, "Hey, don't you remember? I'm Brandon, your old classmate from junior high." That triggered my memory. "Oh, Brandon, you've changed so much, I hardly recognized you." It's no surprise I didn't immediately recognize him. Brandon had transformed significantly since junior high. The Brandon in front of me now was tall, smartly dressed, and carried himself like a successful business professional. However, back in junior high, Brandon was quite different, small, reserved, and not particularly noticeable in class. We lived nearby and often chatted, but I hadn't seen him since we graduated. I had heard he attended prestigious high schools and colleges, but I never expected such a drastic change. "What are you doing here?" Brandon inquired, and I responded promptly. "Oh, I work here at the restaurant." Brandon laughed and commented, "Really? Working at this shabby place?" His remark was frankly disrespectful. "Yeah, but you used to come here too, remember?" I remembered us both visiting this place when our parents were delayed. Brandon then said, "That's all behind me now. I've moved on. It's surprising, Jason, to see you still frequenting such a modest establishment in this small town." Huh? I couldn't comprehend why Brandon would speak to me in such a manner. It was evident he wasn't interested in a friendly conversation. Brandon wasn't like this in the past. What had changed him? More importantly, I couldn't let his disparaging comments about the shop slide. It's disrespectful to speak like that in front of the shop. If that's all you have to say, I'd appreciate it if you left. Brandon replied, "Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to upset you. I just felt pity for you, being in such a situation. Well, take care." He left, leaving behind those unpleasant words. True, the exterior of our restaurant isn't impressive. Originally opened by John's father, it still occupies the same old building. But the quality of our pasta is excellent, something even Brandon should acknowledge despite the shop's appearance. It was disheartening to reunite with an old friend only to find him so changed and unpleasant, but if he can only offer negativity, I'd rather not cross paths with him again. Yet, just a few days later, Brandon showed up once more. "Welcome, Brandon." Just before closing time, who should walk in but Brandon? Dressed as sharply as before, he seemed like a different person. "Hey, thought I'd try some pasta here for the first time in a while," he said. With no option but to serve him, I brought the ordered pasta to Brandon. Then, after finishing his meal, Brandon remarked, "This taste brings back memories." I was relieved. He didn't seem sarcastic today. Perhaps he was just in a bad mood during our last encounter, and this was his way of making amends. Feeling somewhat cheered, I responded, "Right." As he was leaving, I encouraged him, "Feel free to come back anytime. You might be accustomed to more upscale dining, but I think our place has its unique appeal." "Oh, thanks," he replied. After this, Brandon extended an unexpected invitation. "Actually, we're planning a junior high reunion next month. I'd like you to come, Jason. Here are the details." Since leaving junior high, my focus had been on mastering pasta making, leaving little time for socializing with friends. So, the prospect of reuniting with old classmates was a delightful surprise. "Really? I'll definitely be there. Thanks for the invite." I immediately informed John and decided to take the day off for the class reunion. When was the last time I had enjoyed a meal with friends? With a sense of anticipation, I went to the agreed-upon location on the day. However, upon arrival, I felt a twinge of regret. The venue was an upscale traditional restaurant. I hadn't expected such an elegant setting and had dressed casually in a hoodie and jeans. Although fashion isn't my forte, I knew I should have chosen something more suitable for the occasion. Should I go back and change? But it was nearly time to meet. Lost in thought, I heard, "Hey, Jason." I turned and saw Brandon. "Hey, Brandon. Thanks for making it," he said. I couldn't back out now. However, Brandon and the other arriving classmates, clad in jackets and dresses, made my casual attire seem out of place. "Sorry, I completely forgot to mention the dress code," Brandon apologized. I brushed off the situation with a laugh. "Looks like it. I feel somewhat underdressed and embarrassed." This helped ease the awkwardness, and the nearby classmates laughed, making me feel a bit more at ease. But Brandon's next comment stunned me. "Even if you knew the dress code, Jason, you wouldn't have anything appropriate, right? Guys, did you know he's working at that old restaurant I visited recently? It's as outdated and shabby as ever. It's like a relic from a bygone era." I had to hold back my laughter. The classmates erupted in laughter. I had hoped Brandon had changed. But he was again making disparaging remarks, just like when we reconnected. His demeanor fluctuated each time we met, and I couldn't fathom his motives. As I took my seat, Brandon's behavior dampened my enjoyment of the reunion. The dynamic among the others was strange too, as if they were vying for Brandon's favor. I hadn't continued to high school, but I realized that everyone present had attended the same high school as Brandon. While pondering whether something had transpired during their high school years. "Hey, Jason, it's been a while." Ethan approached me and said. With most classmates gravitating towards Brandon, I candidly asked Ethan, "Don't you find Brandon and the others' behavior odd? Did something happen in high school?" Ethan responded, "I wasn't in the same class, so I'm not sure, but after Brandon's father became the principal in our first year, Brandon grew more arrogant. It's a competitive school, and falling out with Brandon was seen as problematic. Since then, everyone's behaved this way. It seems the old pecking order still influences them, even after graduation." This shed light on Brandon's domineering attitude and the others' conduct. Yet, I still couldn't fully understand his harshness towards me. The party progressed smoothly, and I mostly conversed with Ethan. As it neared its end, Brandon approached me. "Having a good time?" he inquired. Concealing my mixed emotions, I replied, "Well, yes, it's been enjoyable." Then Brandon remarked, "I'm relieved. I was worried that someone like you, accustomed to simpler meals, wouldn't appreciate the cuisine at a place this upscale. It's surprising you have similar tastes to ours." He said this loudly enough for everyone to hear, eliciting laughter from the classmates. "Why are you doing this? Are you trying to belittle me?" I questioned. "Aha, you caught on. Not bad for a junior high dropout," Brandon quipped with a smirk. I was stunned. How could he so casually insult me for being less affluent and not completing school? What on earth do you have against me? It's been nearly 10 years since we last met, right? Unable to tolerate this any longer, I confronted Brandon directly. Then he whispered, audible only to me, "Don't act naive. You always looked down on me in junior high. You might have thought you were being kind to me, the short, quiet kid, but you were just patronizing. I was aware of it. Despite your own struggles, you acted superior. I've always held a grudge for that." What? I never looked down on him. I couldn't remember ever condescending anyone. But no matter what I said, Brandon remained unconvinced. "See, that's your problem, always pitying me. You thought you were better because of your tough upbringing. It's sad. Just your presence annoys me," he said angrily. I always thought of Brandon as a friend, but he had perceived our relationship differently. Even though it was years ago, it still hurt. "So today, I invited you here to embarrass you, and you claim to be enjoying yourself. Are you really that oblivious? Your poverty is suffocating. Just leave." At that moment, I realized the truth. I had been excited to see my old classmates, but I was never truly welcome. It wasn't that Brandon and the others had changed. It was me who remained the same. All right, I get it. I'll leave, I said, accepting the situation. There was no point in staying any longer. I gathered my things to leave quietly. Oh, look at you, so compliant. That's a loser's attitude. You'll just embarrass this place with your appearance, so better sneak out. Brandon jeered and the classmates laughed. Just as I was about to exit. Please stop, you are disturbing the other guests, a voice intervened. It was Eleanor, the owner of the upscale restaurant. Brandon was taken aback but quickly retorted. See, even she thinks you're a nuisance. Hurry up and go. However, Eleanor corrected him. You're mistaken. The real disturbance is your behavior. Your derogatory remarks are upsetting our valued regular guest. I can't overlook this. A regular, someone in another private room. They couldn't possibly hear us. Brandon argued. Eleanor clarified. No, I'm referring to Jason, who's trying to leave. He often visits with John from the restaurant. Despite being young, his dedication to pasta making is admirable. While you were relying on your parents, he was working hard. Mocking that isn't funny. It's commendable. Your education might be impressive, but you lack basic understanding and empathy. Indeed, John had frequently brought me to this restaurant. It wasn't just for the cuisine, but also to learn about the exceptional service. Eleanor's support was unexpected but deeply appreciated. You, how dare you speak to a customer like that? I won't return here, Brandon exclaimed, visibly offended. Eleanor responded calmly, that's fine. We prefer guests who respect others. Brandon left the restaurant, visibly frustrated. The other classmates followed him out, all except for Ethan. Thank you so much, Eleanor. When I expressed my gratitude, Eleanor smiled and said this. It's okay. I couldn't bear to see a hard-working young man like you be demeaned. You're dedicated to your path. Remember, you have nothing to be ashamed of. Her words were warmer and more comforting than anything I'd heard from anyone else before. I had chosen my own path in life and tried my best to follow it. Sometimes, I struggled with feelings of inferiority because of my background in a single-parent, low-income household and having to work since junior high. But Eleanor's words were a revelation, showing me that there's no reason to harbor such thoughts. Now, I'm more confident in continuing my journey, trusting in the path I've chosen for myself. Eleanor's encouraging words will always hold a special place in my heart. This is a story about the moment I witnessed a life-changing event in just one night. My name is John. I'm a regular office worker who just turned 60 this year. Although I am a department manager, I've been contemplating whether it's time to step down. At home, I have a wife of the same age and 2 daughters. Both daughters are married and have blessed me with 4 grandchildren. It's a plain life, but I believe I can spend a peaceful and happy retirement. By this age, I don't expect any significant changes in the direction of my life. I think many people feel the same way. Of course, I'm one of them. My life hasn't been about achieving great things, but I am content with what I have. I thought being able to spend the rest of my days peacefully would be the greatest happiness. I think so. But it seems the triggers for significant changes in everyday life can be found in unexpected places. In my case, it was a school reunion. In the summer of the year I turned 60, I received an invitation to a middle school reunion. Thinking back, I vaguely recall discussing having reunions at our coming-of-age and 60th birthdays when we graduated from middle school. But after more than 40 years, I hadn't expected it to actually happen, and I have completely forgotten about it. However, the prospect of meeting old friends after decades was very appealing, and I was eager to attend. With encouragement from my wife, I decided to go to the middle school reunion. Little did I know then the unexpected events that were to unfold. When I arrived at the spacious private room of the restaurant hosting the reunion, I was one of the first to arrive. Only one other person was there. Having last seen each other at our coming-of-age ceremony 40 years ago, I couldn't recognize who it was. "Long time no see, I'm John." When I timidly spoke up, the other person said this. Hi Mike, it's been a while." Mike. Hearing that name, I felt an unpleasant memory I had almost forgotten resurfacing. Mike and I were in the same class in the second and third years of middle school. He was a perfect all-rounder, good in both academics and sports, and even served as the student council president. He was also popular with the girls because of his good looks. However, he was quite disliked among the boys. The reason was, "Hey, John, lend me that handout." This one. As I sat down at my desk in the morning and held the homework handout, Mike said that to me. He almost forcibly took the handout I had, erased my name written in the name field, and wrote his own over it. "What are you doing? Shut up. A plain and short guy like you just needs to listen to what I say, whether you bring your homework or not. Your lousy grades won't change." Mike was the kind of guy who would forcefully push his own way. It was clearly an unfair and wrong act, but he was a popular figure with power within the school. As a middle school student at the time, facing such overwhelming influence, I couldn't protest any further. Mike generally had this attitude towards most of the boys, but it seemed I was particularly targeted. I was often sent on unnecessary errands to the school store, had my lunch thrown away, and sometimes even had money taken from me. But he was smart. He never did anything that left evidence, maintaining his position until graduation. After middle school, we went to different high schools, and I remember he didn't attend the reunion at the coming-of-age ceremony because he was studying abroad. He was the last person I wanted to see again, yet here we were, meeting after 40 years. Now, both of us are stepping into old age, 40 years later. I didn't want to believe that childish bullying would happen again, but the fear ingrained in my heart made my body tense involuntarily. "Good to see you again. Have you been well?" Ignoring my tension, Mike greeted me with a smile, and I felt relieved inside. Indeed, time seems to heal all wounds. Or so I thought, but I was wrong. "Just kidding. Who are you again, John?" Unfortunately, I don't remember insignificant side characters. Mike's voice echoed loudly in the still sparsely populated room. I felt the unpleasant sensation of sweaty palms, a feeling I remembered from decades ago. Mike hadn't changed at all, no matter how much time had passed. But similarly, I hadn't changed much either. Unable to retort, I tried to just smile it off, when suddenly, "Hey, John, long time no see." Hearing this voice from the door, I turned to look. There stood an elderly man, unrecognizable due to the passage of time. But somehow, I knew who he was. He was the only one who had extended a helping hand to me during our middle school days. "Edward, is that you?" When I guessed the name of the person, he replied, "Yeah, it's me. Long time no see," and came towards me, naturally distancing me from Mike. Edward had always been kind to me when I was down because I couldn't stand up to Mike. These memories, buried deep in my mind, began to resurface. Watching Edward and me, Mike laughed and said, I remember now. The dull duo pretending to be friends. Even after 40 years, you haven't changed a bit, leading such low-level lives. As a company president with status and fame, it's like a different world to me. At 60, I never thought I'd feel the need to prove myself or avoid losing to someone. But being sarcastically spoken to like that, I felt a mix of frustration and shame. But I've never been good at talking back. Edward, being a kind soul, never argued and just quietly moved away from Mike, and we tried to forget the unpleasantness together. The dynamic hadn't changed easily over time. Just then, Edward calmly retorted, "Isn't there no level in life? Everyone's different." so there's no need to compare," Edward replied in a remarkably calm tone. Surprised, I looked at Edward. It seemed Mike was equally surprised and quickly came back with a rebuttal. "People who lead bottom-tier lives justify themselves like that. Otherwise, they'd feel miserable enough to die." I heard Edward. "You only finished middle school. You probably haven't landed any significant job." Mike had always been good at striking where it hurts. But Edward, unlike me, seemed different now. "I don't know what you consider a significant job, but I believe I've fulfilled my duty until my recent retirement." Edward said this proudly. But Mike continued. "Being forced to retire already in an era where the retirement age is 65, that's proof you're useless. Stop pretending already." Mike sneered as he said this, but then other classmates arrived, and the conversation ended there. In the past, I would have only felt frustrated, but now it was different. Edward's presence made me feel somewhat relieved. It turned out to be a pleasant reunion after all. Everyone was so aged that we couldn't recognize each other until introductions were made. As the drinks flowed and the evening progressed, we slowly recaptured our old feelings. Though it started with reopening old wounds, I was glad I came. I ended up sitting next to Edward for the duration of the event. So, we talked about what each of us had been up to during the time we hadn't seen each other. We talked about what we had been up to, work, family. We weren't talkative people originally, but after 40 years, we had endless conversations. Edward had changed in many ways, like being able to stand up to Mike, but his fundamentally kind and gentle nature remained the same. That was somewhat reassuring. As the evening drew to a close, Mike, emboldened by alcohol, began loudly boasting about his exploits like tales of valor. Despite being somewhat distant from Edward and me, Mike, perhaps still affected by the earlier incident, kept directing his attention our way. "I'm now the owner of a top-tier hotel. Everyone surely knows its name, that hotel, since I was always excellent from a young age. Everyone must have expected me to achieve something, but to attain a status beyond expectations and make my classmates proud, right, Edward?" Mike insisted on bragging, always steering the conversation our way. "That's incredible, indeed," Edward responded, showing his magnanimity and acknowledging Mike's success. This seemed to irk Mike, who continued his sarcasm. "Just because we're classmates, I can give you any special treatment. It's a hotel too expensive for poor people like you. It's meant for the real elite." Yet, Edward, unfazed, simply replied, "I see, got it." I wondered how Edward had acquired such firm resolve. I was genuinely curious about it. It was a question I just couldn't get out of my mind. Annoyed that Edward didn't take the bait, Mike then began a more dubious tale. "You can top the industry just by doing regular business. Can you simpletons even imagine how I climbed to the top?" He posed the question to our classmates, and seeing everyone tilting their heads in confusion, he seemed quite satisfied. Then, he uttered words that should never have been said. "You keep it hidden. Money matters don't go public if you don't talk about them. If you hide it well, tax evasion or anything else is easy. Only smart people like me can climb up high. You guys probably don't have the guts for it. That's why you're just poor ordinary people." Mike, drunk and red-faced, seemed to enjoy this conversation. The other classmates just listened with dismay. "That's quite a story," I muttered softly to Edward. Then, I realized something important. Once I had realized it, I couldn't just stay silent, so I immediately stood up. "Mike, you should probably stop talking about that." I could feel the blood drain from my face in this unexpected situation. But I doubt anyone around me could guess why I was so anxious. Except for Edward, sitting next to me. However, Mike ignored this final warning and continued to recount his misdeeds as if they were tales of valor. "Can't stand hearing about a world so different from yours. Pathetic. Instead, Such remarks only made him more boastful. Despite the seriousness of the situation, I didn't want to justify criminal behavior or defend Mike, who had been a nuisance since middle school. But the more Mike spoke, the more I sweated. Unable to bear it any longer, I interrupted him. "Mike, Edward was a high-ranking police officer. If you keep going." My words echoed in the hall, silencing everyone. Mike, who had been enjoying his story, turned pale. He knew the gravity of having a police officer overhear these conversations. Edward then stood up and said, "As I mentioned earlier, I've always taken pride in my job and fulfilled my duty. That pride doesn't change even after retirement. I can't overlook such talk of wrongdoing. Appropriate action will be taken." Gathering his belongings, Edward prepared to leave. Mike, his earlier bravado gone, desperately followed Edward. Wait, we're classmates, right? It was just a joke to liven up the mood. Please overlook it, I beg you." But Edward replied, "Classmates or not, I can give you special treatment. You said that yourself earlier. We'll see if it's a lie or not after an investigation. Goodbye." As Edward walked away, Mike collapsed to the ground. Damn, he cried in a voice too hard to listen to. Later, Mike's company was raided by the police. Indeed, they found evidence of tax evasion, just as he had boasted, leading to his arrest. I heard about this when I met with Edward later. That's when I asked him something I'd been curious about: how he had gained such strong willpower. The idea of Edward, who had only a middle school education and was average in studies, becoming a high-ranking police officer had initially shocked me. I was deeply interested in what had happened to him after graduating from middle school. And his answer was something I never expected. "After middle school, when you, my friend, were being bullied, I, too weak, couldn't do anything to help. That feeling of helplessness and shame stayed with me. I couldn't dream or envision a future for myself. So after graduating, I left home and wandered aimlessly, essentially becoming homeless. Then, a police officer approached me. As we talked, I was inspired to become strong, to right wrongs, and to protect others. I wanted to become someone who could defend a friend in trouble. So, in a way, it's thanks to you, John. Haha." "No way, that's exaggerating. I guess I need to be a bit stronger myself. How about I teach you some self-defense next time? We can have you getting mig now, can we?" The long-held thoughts of a friend who was supposed to be closest to me, spanning decades. Knowing this made me incredibly happy. Once you reach the age of 60, it's easy to think that people's lives don't change significantly anymore. That's what I believed. But I was wrong. The paths we take in our 60 years of life, for better or worse, diverge. And this is likely the same whether we're 70 or 80. So, I'll continue to walk a straight path, even if it's ordinary, one that I won't be ashamed of in front of others. Reuniting with an old friend made me realize this. "I'm utterly disappointed in you." These words from the department head, Lorraine, pierced my ears. As I cleared my desk, I felt the cold gaze of my female boss and heard the snickers of those around me. I, once a promising new graduate, never imagined stumbling like this. Lorraine, who was the cause of it all, smiled maliciously. "I heard that your wife even dumped you. She served you divorce papers the day after the personal change, didn't she? What about it? Just thinking how pitiful it is." Lorraine chuckled mockingly. I glared at her briefly, lifting a cardboard box filled with my belongings. My wife was no longer at home, leaving only the divorce papers in my possession. She took all the furniture with her, and even our savings. I guess it was the sign of my failure as a husband. My transfer to a rural backwater was due to harassment from my new female boss. Though Lorraine often sneered at me, I never expected to be blamed for the work mistakes that she made. Blamed for them, I was transferred to a branch office in the countryside. My ex-wife, whom I married right after university, left me, probably thinking I let her down. While packing up my things, I was approached by my colleague, Jordan. "I'm going to miss you around here." "Well, there's nothing I can do. I'm no longer needed here." "Then, there must be something for you to do in the new place you're going to." "Maybe. Thanks for everything. See you." I left my old workplace with all my belongings, and soon after that, I moved to the rural town I was relegated to. What a joy to have such a young guy join us right at the start of the year. Welcome aboard. Cheers. On the first day of work at the branch office, everyone welcomed me, even throwing a welcome party in the meeting room. The treatment here was so different from what I received at the head office. Man, there are only older people working here, barely managing to use the modern technology. We can type on Word, like we used to do on a typewriter, but that's about it. Do you even know what a typewriter is? Yes, I do. Now you can show us how to use these new phones too. Taking photos and videos, sending emails. I'd love to learn about apps too. As we were talking over drinks, I couldn't help thinking, seriously. Indeed, there were hardly any young people living in this remote town, and I was surprised to find most employees at this branch office were rehired retirees. It's nice to be employed at this age, but we're not tech-savvy. We're having trouble using computers, and there's no one to teach us how to use them. That's right, we can't even use Excel. We still work with pen and paper, so whatever we do, it just takes a long time. We can find anyone with computer skills, even if we advertise for a part-time job. I see. I wondered if I could really make it in a place like this. Although I was feeling uneasy about working at this branch office, I had no choice but began working, welcomed by everyone. The next day, I found myself teaching computer basics to seniors at work. Let's see. First, basic chart creation in Excel, and perhaps the function used in the advanced course. I printed out meticulously formatted manuals on A4 papers for everyone. By using the manuals, I hoped to prevent the situation where they would start saying, "Oh, I asked about this before but I forgot." The elderly staff here were forgetful, but eager to learn by taking notes. I made the manuals as clear as possible, with large diagrams and illustrations. The old computers at the company were a challenge too. I negotiated with the headquarters to arrange newer computers through a rental service. There shouldn't be any more excuses for not being able to do office work due to Excel issues. I'm just curious, since nobody knew how to use Excel. Who was handling the office work before I came here? Puzzled, I asked my colleague, Henry, about it. It was Emma. She's the daughter of Max, who lives nearby. She got a job in a city after graduating from college, but the company she was working for went bankrupt due to the recession. She couldn't find another job, so she came back home. She worked here for a while as an office clerk, but then she had to quit due to some family issues. Well, with what happened, it couldn't be helped. What happened? It's nothing. Without saying anything further, Henry returned to his desk. Why did she quit when there was no other work in this town? What could have happened? For a long time, I was wondering about this girl named Emma. Some time had passed. Then on one weekend, the weather suddenly changed. One minute it was sunny, and the next we had a downpour. I couldn't even handle laundry outside. I was thinking, looking out the window, when someone visited the old house I was renting. I hurried to the door as the doorbell rang repeatedly, and there stood a woman, drenched in the rain. "Hi, what happened? You're soaking wet. What's going on?" I couldn't help but ask the woman. "Hi, sorry to bother you. My father has gone missing. Have you seen an elderly man in his pajamas around here?" "No, I haven't seen anyone." Hearing that, she looked down and said, "I see." I handed her a towel and asked, "Your father is missing?" She nodded silently to my question. "Have you contacted the police?" "Yes, I have. They're searching for him as we speak." As if on cue, the public address system announced a missing elderly man. The missing person is Max Saran, 58 years old, of medium build. Wait, Max. Are you Emma? Yes, that's me. I was surprised. The woman in front of me was Emma, the one Henry mentioned the other day at the office, the former employee of our company. The missing person was her father. Then I explained to her that I was working at the company where Emma used to work. She seemed a bit relieved and started to share her story. She told me about her father's dementia and the need for care, which led her to quit her job, that it was not easy to make ends meet, but somehow she was managing with the government support and her little savings. But lately, my father started wandering off frequently, and I can't deal with it on my own anymore. I see. I've talked to his care manager about placing my father in a care facility. With a sigh, she continued. But I'm not sure if it's the right thing to do, putting him in a care facility. I feel guilty, especially after he supported me through college. Maybe I should continue taking care of him myself. Tears welled up in her eyes. She must have been thinking about this alone for quite some time. I see. That must be really tough. Thank you for sharing this with me. Oh, I should be going now. Are you going to continue looking for your father on your own? Yes. I can keep bothering others with this. You should change out of those wet clothes, even if it's warm outside. Oh, her face turned red. Embarrassed, she hugged herself and looked down. Oh, no, I'm sorry for my appearance. Just then, the emergency broadcast resumed. Max has been found safe. Thank you all for your assistance. Oh, they found my father. That's great to hear. Yes, I'm so glad. Thank you, she said with a smile. I found myself worrying about her and impulsively offered my help. If you like, I can come with you to pick up your father. I can bring my car right now. But that'll be too much. We've just met. I'm an employee of the company you used to work for. I heard about you from others. Given the situation, let me help you. Okay, thank you. She reluctantly agreed to my offer. After that, I drove her to pick up Max. Exhausted, Max was sound asleep in the hospital bed. He had been found with a bruised hip and was scheduled to get some tests done the next day. For precaution, he was admitted to the hospital. I ended up driving him home. It must be really tough, taking care of your father all by yourself. Not at all. It's something everyone does. During the drive, we talked a lot. She seemed anxious about her future, as she was unable to work but had to care for her father. I'd prefer to stay at home as much as possible, she said, looking vulnerable. Hearing her story, I came up with a suggestion. But I'm not sure if I can manage it. I'm already overwhelmed with my father's care. It might be better to consider placing your father in a care facility sooner. What if something like today happens again and he's not found? That's true, but at least in a care facility, the risk of him wandering off would be significantly reduced. I know. I'll think about it. Thank you for your advice. I might have been interfering, but I thought something needed to be done for her before it was too late. Shortly thereafter, I decided to bring up a matter at the company. I made a suggestion to the company that some of the computer-based tasks should be outsourced. The proposed contractor was Emma. I'm anxious about balancing work from home and caregiving, but I'll give it a try. Having some income will make life a bit easier as well. I agree. I'll do my best. The company quickly approved the proposal, and Emma began assisting with our office work. She also started searching for a care facility to take in her father. Continuing caregiving without a job was financially challenging, and to avoid repeating her father's missing incidents, it seemed necessary to find a facility for him. I'll miss living with my father, but I've realized it's selfish of me to keep him at home, she said with a wistful smile. Some time later, a place for her father in a facility was secured. Located next to the hospital in town, It provided reassurance of immediate medical care if needed. Emma told me about this with a smile. Hearing this, I said to her, "That's great. Your work is highly praised at the company. Now, would you consider coming back to the office to work with us? There's no need for you to work from home anymore. Teaching everyone about computers is quite a task for me." Laughing, I made my offer, and she responded with surprise, "Really? Is that okay?" "Yes, in fact, the company is keen on rehiring you. What do you think?" "Yes, I would love to accept that offer," she answered enthusiastically. No, thank you for joining our team again," I said in return. Emma was rehired and returned to our company. "Looking forward to working with you again, Emma. We're so relieved to have you back. With a young presence, the workplace will be livelier." "I'll do my best again." Seeing her sparkling smile, I felt a flutter of excitement. Initially, I wasn't sure if I could make it in this rural town, but I've started feeling that I would be fine. I suddenly remembered what my old colleague, Jordan, said to me before I came here. "There must be something for you to do." Yes, there must be something for me to do here. Feeling a sense of destiny, I resolved to give my best in this town from now on.